Good evening and welcome. You're watching Primetime News coming to you live and direct from our Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. This is News First, where the people come first. I'm Mariam Kanamijaya. We start off with a look at your headlines.
Detained IUSF activists moved to Tangol Detention Center. Stop using PTA and immediately resigned detention orders, BSL tells President. Sri Lanka plans to replace the controversial Prevention of Terrorism Act. Law enforcement continues raids to round up Aragalaya activists. Sri Lanka ranked 4th in real food inflation, according to World Bank assessment. Sri Lankan government must provide Gotabaya Rajapaksa what an ex-president is entitled to, Human Rights Commission tells President. Dr. Harsha De Silva chairs the Committee on Public Finance.
On to your lead story this evening. Sri Lanka has limited imports of a series of items, including chocolate and other food preparations containing cocoa and perfumes. The list for the temporary suspension of selected items includes microwave irons, playing cards, keyboard instruments, electrical alarm clocks, binoculars, sunglasses, warships, inflatable rafts and wheelbarrows. For the full list on this story, you can log on to our website www.Newsfirst.lk. Moving on to more local developments, 3 Sri Lankan university student activists who were detained under the Prevention of Terrorism Act were moved to a detention center today. The convener of the Inter-University Students' Federation, Vasantha Mudalige, Hashantha Gunathilaka from the IUSF, and the convener of the Inter-University Bhikkhu Federation, Venerable Galwava Siridhammathera, who are now detained under the Prevention of Terrorism Act for 90 days, were moved to the Tangol Central Detention Center on Tuesday. Police spokesperson, Attorney-at-Law SSP Nihal Talduwa said the Terrorist Investigation Division and the Criminal Investigation Department are conducting individual investigations regarding them. He further went on to note that the Criminal Investigation Department is conducting investigations to ascertain any possible link to any anti-government conspiracy, while the Terrorist Investigation Division is investigating terrorism-related charges. The Terrorist Investigation Division, in a letter to Attorney-at-Law Nuwan Bopage, informed that the closest relatives of the suspects will be given the opportunity to meet them once a week. It added that they must be in possession of a letter certified by the local Gramaniladari office confirming their relationship to the detained student activists. During a protest held on the 18th by the Inter-University Students' Federation in Colombo, 19 people, including Vasantha Mudalige, were arrested by the police and 15 of them were released on bail by court. Meanwhile, the Bar Association of Sri Lanka calls upon the President and the law enforcement authorities to refrain from using the PTA and immediately rescind the detention orders.
The Bar Association of Sri Lanka, in a statement, said it is deeply concerned at the use of the provisions of the Prevention of Terrorism Act to arrest and detain persons who have been involved in protests against the government. It adds that the PTA is a draconian piece of legislation which gives wide powers to the executive to arrest and detain persons for a lengthy period of time. The BASL points out that although detention orders are amenable to the fundamental rights and writ jurisdictions of the apex courts, they are not subject to regular judicial supervision, unlike instances of arrests and detention under the general law. It adds that the administrative detention confers the executive with wide powers over the freedom of physical liberty of a person, and lengthy detention periods without judicial supervision go against internationally accepted standards of protections of human rights. The Bar Association of Sri Lanka said there is also the danger that such detention may result in the detainee being subject to torture and inhumane treatment. The BASL states that the provisions of the PTA must be resorted to only in very exceptional circumstances where there is manifest evidence indicative of a terrorist dimension that would make its use justifiable. The Bar Association of Sri Lanka calls upon the President and the law enforcement authorities to refrain from using the PTA and immediately rescind the detention orders.
The
The UK High Commission in Colombo says it is concerned about reported use of the Prevention of Terrorism Act. It added that the PTA is seen as inconsistent with respect to human rights. The UK High Commission in Colombo urges authorities to stand by their commitments to stop its use.
Sri Lanka is to rename the controversial Prevention of Terrorism Act. This was announced during Tuesday's cabinet media briefing.
Sri Lanka's Justice Minister had told the Cabinet of Ministers yesterday that the Prevention of Terrorism Act will be subject to amendments.
The Minister of Justice informed the Cabinet that he is currently preparing a new bill that will bring about the necessary amendments to change the Prevention of Terrorism Act, which was enacted since 1979. Accordingly, the PTA will be replaced by the National Security Act.
ත්‍රස්තවාදයේ වැළැක්වීමේ පනත වෙනුවට තමයි ඒ සංශෝධනය කරලි වෙලා ඒකට අවශ්‍ය පනතක් ලෙස අලුත් පනතක් ලෙස තමයි ජාතික ආරක්ෂක පනත හදන බව අධිකරණ ඇමතුමා දැනුම්. ඒතකොට අර පනත අහෝසි වෙනවා.
අන්තර් විශ්වවිද්‍යාල ශිෂ්‍ය බල මණ්ඩලයේ කැඳුම්කරු වසන්ත මුදල්ගේ ඇතුළු තිදෙනෙක් මේ වෙනකොට ත්‍රස්තවාදී වැළැක්වීම පනත යටතේ අත්අඩංගුවට ගෙන තිබෙනවා. දවස් 3ක් තිස්සේ මොවුන්ගෙන් ප්‍රශ්න කරා. තොරතුරක් අනාවරණය කරගත්තාද යම්කිසි ත්‍රස්තවාදී ක්‍රියාවක් කරන්න පෙළඹීමක් තිබෙන බවට හෝ මොවුන් රජයට විරුද්ධව යම් කැරැල්ලක් දියත් කිරීමට සැඟවුණ ආයුධ හෝ යම්කිසි ප්‍රපුරණ ද්‍රව්‍යයක් සංවා තිබෙන බවට තොරතුරු අනාවරණය තිබෙනවද?
සංවිධානාත්මක ඉලක්කගත කරලා
72 houses of parliamentarians were destroyed. Then the defence minister informed us that there was a conspiracy to provoke the public and by doing that to storm in and set ablaze the parliament. We believe that there was a conspiracy to topple a government that was elected through democratic mechanisms. We are looking into this conspiracy. Since it is difficult to discover information regarding a conspiracy by just holding interrogations for a few hours, the security forces have requested permission to detain these suspects for more than 24 hours for further interrogation. I believe that is the reason why they are being kept in custody.
The Inter-University Students' Federation and several organizations spoke to reporters on the detention of activists.
The Prevention of Terrorism Act is not acceptable in any civilized country in the world. This is a draconian law. They are using it against the protesters. These protesters did not take up any stone. They spoke for democracy. A protest is a way of measuring democracy. Democracy does not mean listening to what they have to say. Ranil Wickremesinghe is taking on the Aragale protesters for the requirement of the Rajapaksas. What will happen is Ranil Wickremesinghe will become a torturer from within that. The suppression is creating a program to bring back the Rajapaksas to power. We are aware the Aragale protesters cannot score big every day. We know when to back down and when to go on the offensive. We wish to tell those who are with the Rajapaksa gang and Ranil they can dance as they please, but we as the Aragale protesters will respond democratically.
මේකට දෙන්න ඕන උපරිම ප්‍රහාරය එකටත් වෙන වෙනමත් සාමූහිකවත් අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම දෙනවා.
Sri Lanka police today visited the CSR, or the Centre for Society and Religion.
The Sri Lanka police visited the premises of the Centre for Society and Religion today evening while a media briefing was underway. The police had made inquiries about Eranga Gunasekara, the national organizer of the Socialists Youth Union. An individual identified as Shalika Rukshan was arrested at Vauxhall Street, Colombo today evening for allegedly wearing military fatigues during a protest down Bank of Ceylon Mawatha in Colombo. He was arrested while monitoring the activities of the Aragalaya Media Centre, which is to be opened tomorrow.
නීත්‍යානුකූලව එනවනම් ඒ නීති ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න නම් එන්නේ ඒ විදිහට අදාළ විදිහට ආවනම් අපි එකයි නීතියට. අනේ කොහොම මහත්තයෝ දැන් වොරන්ට් එක අවශ්‍යතාවයක් නැහැ. ඒ මහත්තයෝ වොරන්ට් ඕනේ නැහැ. වොරන්ට් මොනවද? අයියේ අධිකරණයේ නම් කරන මේ මොකද වරදක් ඔයා කවුද ඔයාගේ අධිකරණයේ එට එන්න. අයියේ ඒක බලා ගන්න. දැන් ඔයා කවුද කියලා මම සාමාන්‍ය පුරවැසියෙක් මහත්තයෝ. මහත්තයෝ මිනිස්සු පුරවැසියෙක්. මම කරන්න එපා. ඒක අධිකරණයේ නඩු තීන්දුවට උතුර විරුද්ධ වෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒ හරි අපිට තීන්දුව පෙන්නන්න. තීන්දුව බලන්න. කොහෙද තීන්දුව? හරි මේ සාගමකට දැන් අපිට අවශ්‍ය කරන අපිට පොඩක් ඉන්න බව එතකොට ලිඛිත වාර්තා අවශ්‍ය නැද්ද? අපිට නීතිය තේරෙන නිසා මේ ගන්න ඕනේ නැතුම් කවුද? හරි පොඩි මුන් කවුද ශ්‍රී ලාංකීය පුරවැසියෙක් සාමාන්‍ය
Sanat Nishantha, a member of parliament from the Sri Lanka Podujana Peramuna, attended a press conference to comment on repression.
තක්සය වෘත්තීය සමිති චෝදනා කරන්නේ දැඩි මර්ධනයක් මේ ආණ්ඩුව ගෙනියනවා කියලා. දැඩි මර්ධනයක් කියන්නේ අපිට ඉතිහාසය අපි දැකලා.
You would have witnessed how a crackdown took place in 1988 and 1989. Compared to that, this is nothing. When I was an MP with the joint opposition, I was remanded for 3 months and 19 days for no reason. Officers from the Attorney General's Department, members of the Bar Association and some justices might be responsible for letting loose those criminals subject to bail. The law is not being enforced in the country. If the Public Property Act and the Archaeological Act cease to exist, anyone can assault or kill anyone. For cases under the Public Property Act, the Archaeological Act bail can only be obtained from the High Court. But the Magistrate Court is granting bail. Some officials must be responsible for this.
ඒකට සමහර නිලධාරීත් වක් කියන්න ඕන කියන එකයි මගේ අදහස.
වැඩිම ජනවරමකින් පත්වෙච්ච ජනාධිපතිවරයා ගහලා එළවපු රටක් කියලා කතාවද මොකද්ද කිව්වේ ඔබතුමා? ඔබතුමාත් ඒකට වග කිය යුතුයි කියලා චෝදනාවක් කරා.
මේ රටේ මිනිස්සුන්ට
The people have the right to move about. As a government, an MP that represented government, if we are not able to proceed to the President's office from Temple Trees with a letter, and if we were assaulted, we retaliate. I did not assault anyone, and I was not assaulted, but those I were with were assaulted, and they had responded to it.
මොනයිකට ප්‍රතිචාර දක්වලා තිබුණා ඉතින් කියලා. සංදේශයක් අරන් යනවා. අනිවාර්යයෙන්. ජනාධිපති සංදේශේ මහා ලොකු එකක් මේක සාක්කුවේ දාන්න ගියේ. ඔව් ඒක අරන් යනකොට තමයි මේ සංදේශ කියන එක මම කියන්නේ ලොකු මහා දැවැන්ත එකක් නෙමෙයි සාක්කුවේ දාන්න ගියේ මගේ සාක්කුවේ තිබුණේ. ඒක බාර දෙන්නයි ගියේ.
Attorney at law Sunil Watagala responded to the claims made by the SLPP MP. I came across the comments made by MP Sanat Nishantha. He speaks of bail being granted by the judges. So are we in contempt of court? The comments on social media state that the AG's department and others are supporting the Argale protesters, so they get bail. If there is no evidence, the judges would set bail. They continue to be in contempt of court. He has no legal right to make such comment. The National People's Power responded to the comments made by SLPP's Sanat Nishantha. Was that letter wrapped around the poles they had in hand? As a journalist, you can find out whether that letter was wrapped on those poles they had. We only saw the poles. We didn't see any letter. If Sanat Nishantha claims that they came to hand over a letter, why did he walk to the President's house from Temple Trees? He should have used his vehicle. We have never seen letters delivered in that manner.
Sri Lanka's opposition leader Sajid Premadath warned that by violating the rights of the people, the country will receive negative responses from the international fora.
Every citizen should have the freedom to hold his or her own opinion, to support any political party of their preference, and to meet or to hold protests. These rights are being enshrined into the constitution of the country. But now, this government has utilized the provisions in the PTA to suppress the people of the country. In a time where we are desperate for international aid, it's best we follow the accepted international norms and practices. But the government is violating them. This might result into a situation where the international community would even cancel the aid they have proposed to give us.
Meanwhile, student movements continue to demand the immediate release of their detained student activists.
The Students' Federation of the University of Peradeniya protested today, demanding the immediate release of the activists of the Inter-University Students' Federation. The protest took place at the Galaha Junction. One lane of the Colombo Kandy Road was closed from the Galaha junction due to the protest. An individual who does not have a mandate was brought into parliament, then seated in a chair of the Prime Minister, and is now the President. Instead of finding solutions for the people's problems, he is punishing those who fought for their rights. We know that the emergency law will end on the 29th of August, but there is no emergency situation in the country. It is the government who are under a state of emergency. The people of this country took to the streets not to carry out an anti-government conspiracy, but to retain their rights to live. We ask him, under what basis do you say that the people coming to the streets is an act of terrorism?
The Secretary of the Ceylon Teachers Service Union was summoned to the police today.
Secretary of the Ceylon Teachers Service Union, Joseph Stalin, was summoned to the Mutual Police today for addressing a gathering at the President's office on the 13th of July 2022. I was summoned to be told that a case will be called up tomorrow on the matter. This suppression is seriously wrong. It was a democratic protest. We are ready to face anything.
The Colombo Magistrates Court today issued a warrant for the arrest of Dr. Pathum Kerner, a member of the Argalaya protests, for failing to appear in court. Colombo Additional Magistrate Harshana Kakunavala issued the arrest warrant when the case relating to the protest that took place at the Poldua Junction in Battaramulla on the 13th of July 2022 was taken up in court. The Colombo Crimes Division informed the court that public assistance is sought to identify 50 individuals who are suspected to have been a part of the protest that took place at the Poldua Junction in Battaramulla on the 13th of July 2022. The Colombo Additional Magistrate ordered for the case to be called up again on the 29th of November. A man who was arrested by CID for stealing a foreign liquor bottle from the private residence of President Ranil Wickremesinghe when it was set on fire was remanded until Wednesday the 24th. The remand order was made by Colombo Fort Magistrate Thilina Gamage on Tuesday the 23rd. Meanwhile, a woman who was arrested on suspicion of pushing people into Beira Lake on the May 9th was remanded until the 26th. Colombo Fort Magistrate Thilina Gamage ordered that the suspect be produced in an identification parade on the 26th of August and her identity be protected when she is escorted to court on that day. The Colombo Crimes Division has arrested this woman during the investigations carried out in relation to pushing the people who were returning from the meeting held at the Temple Trees into the Beira Lake. The national organizer of the Socialist Students Union, Rangana Lakmal Devapriya, and several others were also released on bail after being produced to the Fort Magistrates Court.
Today, 7 are presented for 4 or 5 cases. What they are trying to do is character assassination and to put them down mentally. We will continue the struggle until the crisis is solved. We invite the people of this country to come together to change this country.
Sri Lanka's inflation has hit another record high. But what is the central bank's take on this? Let's take a look at this story after this short commercial break. Stay with us. We will be right back.
මොකද මහත්තයා මේ නෑ මේ ගෙදර සිංක් එකේ අයි මහත්තයා ස්ලෝන් නෙමෙයිද දැම්මේ හදිස්සියට බාලා පයිප්පයක් දැම්මේ නැද්ද මුදලාලි ඊයේ පෙරේදා කඩේ රිපෙයාර් කරන්න ගෙනාපු ගම් චුට්ටක් මේ වගේ ප්‍රශ්න වලට හොඳම විසඳුම ස්ලෝන් ගම් චුට්ටක් හැබැයි ඉක්මනින් දාගන්න ස්ලෝන් පයිප්පයක්
ස්ලෝන් ගම් චුට්ටා හැම ගෙදරකම සිටිය යුතු ජනනල කාර්මිකයා දැන් රඟම ග්‍රොසරියෙන් මිලදී ගන්න.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime News on TV1. Moving on. The latest World Bank assessment for August 2022 says Sri Lanka ranks 4th, only behind Lebanon, Zimbabwe and Iran with regard to real food inflation. In Sri Lanka, agricultural production has decreased by 40 to 50% because of fertilizer shortages, and there is a lack of foreign exchange to purchase food imports.
According to the World Bank assessment for August of this year, Lebanon recorded the highest real food inflation, followed by Zimbabwe and Iran. In Sri Lanka, agricultural production has decreased by 40% to 50% because of the fertilizer shortages, and there is a lack of foreign exchange to purchase food imports. The World Bank assessment noted that shortage in fertilizer and fuel for land preparation, transport and harvesting activities are expected to limit the food supply. The World Bank warns that food inflation in Sri Lanka is likely to worsen. Sri Lanka's nationwide inflation galloped 66.7% in the 12 months to July of 2022, which is the highest level of inflation recorded in Sri Lankan history. In June, that figure stood at 58.9%. Accordingly, food inflation increased to 82.5% in July 2022 from 75.8% in June of 2022, while non-food inflation increased to 52.4% in July of 2022 from 43.6% in June of 2022. Accordingly, within the food category, increases were observed in the prices of milk powder, fresh fish, biscuits and chicken. However, prices of vegetables, coconut oil and coconut decreased during the month.
In fact, in our projections, we see inflation will be moving below 70% even after the adjustment of electricity prices that was introduced by the government last week. We have incorporated the impact of the energy price rise as well. With that, with the supply chain issues easing and also demand side is easing, we are not going to see in our predictions inflation won't touch 70% going forward, and also it will be peaking somewhere in September compared to earlier we thought it would be peaking somewhere later. So that's a clearly different and much better disinflation path that we see going forward as far as our prediction is concerned now.
This is the level of inflation in Sri Lanka, and the country's economic crisis worsened due to the dollar shortage. Sri Lanka stopped repaying its international debts to conserve dwindling foreign currency reserves. The country is now not making any interest or debt installment payments for international debt servicing. Representatives from heavyweight financial and legal advisors Lazard and Clifford Chance recently arrived in Sri Lanka to kick off the debt restructuring process. In the interim, Sri Lanka is aiming at a financial facility from the International Monetary Fund to solve the debt issue, or at least obtain some financial relief. Sri Lanka has not been able to reach a staff-level agreement with the IMF despite several rounds of discussions. The IMF staff will visit Colombo between the 24th to the 31st of August to continue discussions with the Sri Lankan authorities on economic and financial reforms and policies. The objective is to make progress towards reaching a staff-level agreement on a prospective IMF extended fund facility arrangement in the near term.
So this is where we think, for example, now once we reach the staff-level agreement, then the timeline is that then we have to approach all our external creditors and start negotiating and discussing in good faith for us to obtain a relief on the discharge payments. So therefore that we need what they call financial assurance from our external creditors. We think next about 3-4 months. So hopefully, if all goes well, if all external creditors are cooperating with the Sri Lankan government debt management strategy, then hoping that we would be able to getting financial assurance somewhere in December, so that the IMF can submit our paper to the executive board so that they can start disbursing the extended fund facility towards end of this year. That is our timeline that we would like to basically implement. That all depends on how we got the support from the external creditors and how negotiation process going on. So this uncertainty is there, so hopefully that we all will be supporting us.
However, according to the IMF, because Sri Lanka's public debt is assessed as unsustainable, approval by the IMF Executive Board of the EFF program would require adequate assurances by Sri Lanka's creditors that debt sustainability will be restored. IMF staff would also continue the engagement with other stakeholders during the visit. Recently, the president said Sri Lanka will ask Japan to invite the Indian Ocean Islands' main creditor nations, including China and India, to hold talks on bilateral debt restructuring.
Now, in fact, we have not officially approached the creditors yet. This way, as I mentioned, we are waiting until we come to agreement with the targets we have to reach and start agreement with the IMF. Only after that we will be reaching out formally.
The Central Bank of Sri Lanka and the relevant department is responsible for debt management. They will fulfill their duty. The situation in Sri Lanka is simple. It cannot service the international debt installments or interest rates, and it's scraping its way to source US dollars to procure essential imports. Therefore, it is paramount to prioritize the matter of solving Sri Lanka's worsening economic crisis. Would delaying this process further push Sri Lanka and her people into a deeper abyss?
People struggle to make ends meet amidst many problems. Today, Gammadda was able to be a comfort to a group of children who are living in the midst of such challenges in Kalpitia.
These are the children of the Periyasandi Bilingual School in Kalpitia, and today is a day of smiles for these children and their families. And that is because from today they can drink clean water until their thirst is quenched. About 130 children are studying in this school under minimal facilities. Due to the salinity of groundwater, access to clean drinking water became the main problem faced by these children. Understanding the plight of the people, Gammadda opened a water purification center for them today. The project was implemented with the support and contributions from the members of the Mushin family. Because of such selfless people, the thirst of the children of the Periyasandi Bilingual School will be quenched. Gammadda will continue to work for the future of the country's children.
In other news making headlines tonight, the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka has said that Gotabaya Rajapaksa is entitled to certain privileges and benefits as an ex-president established under law.
The chairperson of the Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka, retired Supreme Court Judge Rohini Marasinghe, and the Commissioner Dr. Nimal Karunasivi, in a letter to the President, said the HRCSL received complaints on the premise that the former President and family cannot return to the country due to the prevailing threats they face. The Human Rights Commission of Sri Lanka, quoting the relevant article in the Constitution, said that it is inherent for all citizens to return to their country whenever such a citizen seems necessary. It recommended that the government of Sri Lanka takes all necessary steps to assess the threat situation and provide the ex-president with the security protection provided under the law for an ex-president to return to the country whenever he makes such a request. The family of Gotabaya Rajapaksa, now living abroad, is entitled to the protection of the law to a safe return to the country, and the HRCSL recommends that the government of Sri Lanka provide adequate protection to the family of Gotabaya Rajapaksa to return to the country.
Sri Lanka's former Finance Minister Ravi Karunanayake was seen in Colombo on Tuesday, engaging in a relief program.
Former Sri Lankan Minister Ravi Karunanayake delivered vouchers for low-income earners in Kochikade, Colombo today.
We did not offer everything back then. We said we would build the country and allow the people to benefit. Today, we have nothing. The country is becoming a joke. Why isn't everyone joining the cultivation process? I was told that non-essentials were also cultivated. Some are even reprimanding the use of the PTA. It is a serious matter to topple a government. Toppling a government is not an issue, but toppling a state is. So, acts of terrorism needs to be dealt with.
The Samaki Jana Balavegya convened a media briefing in Colombo.
If the struggle is an anti-government conspiracy, then driving out the president and the appointment of the new president is also an anti-government conspiracy. If the struggle is illegal, then the appointment of the president is also illegal. People like Julian Bowling, people who conducted the protest, top management of media organizations are also being called. just to scare the people and to arrest certain groups. You can't scare the people like that. I never thought that they are scared of a student leader like Wasantha Mudalige. If the so-called leaders are so strong and hard-working, why would they issue detention orders and put people like Wasantha Mudalige in jail for 3 months? I don't understand. So stop the repression immediately and stop pleasing the Pohotuwa. They no longer have the mandate.
State-owned Lanka Satosa announced a reduction in the prices of multiple essential items.
State-run supermarket chain Lanka Satosa has offered to drop the prices of a series of essential goods.
We will reduce the price of imported samba rice by 21 rupees from today. Dal will also be reduced by 25 rupees and the new price of dal in our outlets will be 460 rupees. A kilo of sprats in the market is around 1,800 to 1,850 rupees today. Through our Satosa network, we were able to sell a kilo of sprats for 1,375 rupees. We are also selling a kilo of brown sugar for 300 rupees. We expect to sell a kilo of imported Nadu rice for 198 rupees and a kilo of dry chilies for 1,690 rupees.
The first committee meeting of the Committee on Public Finance for the third session of the 9th Parliament was held under the chairmanship of Dr. Harsha De Silva. In accordance with the Standing Order 121, the Committee of Selection appointed Dr. Harsha De Silva, Member of Parliament, as the chairman of the committee. We discussed on opening an independent budget office in Parliament. The provisions were prepared by the 8th Parliament. We hope to have it approved soon.
MTV Channel Private Limited, comprising of Sirasa TV, Shakti TV, TV1 and Newsfirst, entered into an agreement with digital satellite television platform FreeSat in Colombo today.
FreeSat, a digital satellite media platform broadcasting on the latest DVB S2X technology, has the unique proposition of offering its channels free to users. The agreements were officially exchanged between Susara Dinal, the CEO of MTV Channel Private Limited, and Kaminda Samarakun, the CEO of FreeSat.
Service where we are able to provide all the Sri Lankans, especially on the analog, people, to have proper quality pictures. Our technology right now is actually DVB S2X. And this is the world's second platform, and we are so proud to have it in Sri Lanka.
Every single household in Sri Lanka can access SD or HD or 4K pictures in greater quality using this platform. We used the widely accepted DVB S2X technology. Our compression technology is H265 or HEVC. It is not used by anyone in Sri Lanka at the moment.
The partnership between MTV Channel Private Limited and FreeSat will see your favorite 3 local TV channels, Sirasa, Shakti, TV1 and of course your trusted news provider Newsfirst, available absolutely free and with crystal clear reception on FreeSat.
The third phase of the Divi Savia program continues to assist poverty-stricken families in Sri Lanka as the economic crisis continues to grip our nation tighter each day. Today's program, supported by LOLC Holdings, took place in the Ampara district.
The 18th day of the third phase of the Divi Savia program took place today. Essential relief packs were distributed to poverty-stricken families in 2 areas across the Ampara district. The Divi Savia program, supported by LOLC Holdings, identifies families that are facing severe financial difficulties and provides them with much-needed relief packages.
And that's a wrap of your news for tonight. I'm Mariam Gadamajaya. Good night and take care.